Today we're testing the most expensive IAT sensor versus the cheapest. Is it worth the money? Stick around. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the garage, and today we've got an episode that I've been wanting to do for so long, and that is testing the Rife IAT sensor versus the cheapest one I could find on Amazon. So we're talking about $75 versus about $10 to $12. And you know, they say that these things have faster response, they're more accurate, all this other stuff. I don't buy any of it. So I thought, pony up the 75 bucks. See if it works. And what we're going to do is we're going to hook up a multimeter on here, just measure the ohms at ambient, then I'm going to stick them in my little beer cooler. And we're not necessarily going to be checking the accuracy per se in the beer cooler because the thermostat on the top of that thing is a little bit off. But we will see how long it takes for these things to stabilize in the beer cooler, and we'll check to see the resistance between the two to see if they're close. Theoretically, they should be spot on. They're both on the same scale, but that's the big thing, is whether or not this thing somehow reads faster. We're going to find out, and you know, if we have to, if it turns out that these two have resistances that are way off from each other, then we can break out the laser gun or the infrared camera and try and get an idea of which one's actually reading correctly. But before we get into that, I want to take a minute to talk about our sponsors for this video. If you're like me, you spend a lot of time trying to find good shirts, whether or not it's working in the garage, lounging around the house, or going out on the town. And that's why I'm excited that Into the AM is sponsoring this video. I am huge on comfortable shirts, but the problem normally goes that if it's comfortable, it may be heavy, traps a lot of sweat, doesn't breathe well, you know, and that's what's nice about the blend that they use on these. The cotton poly blend on these are perfect. They're light, the sweat just evaporates off, they're comfortable, super soft, probably the softest shirts I've ever worn before, and they're tagless. So I want you to use my link down below, intotheam.com/GoatRopeGarage. You can save 10% on there, and I suggest going out and at least checking out the basics. You can get a 3-pack of basics for cheap, no logos, but if you want logos, shop around. They've got just so many cool, wicked designs. I mean, this one's got an astronaut with a DeLorean on it. How could I not get this one, right? So, as I said, use our link. It's down in the description. Go save some money. Get yourself some comfortable shirts that are great for anything. Garage work, tuning, awesome for tuning. Going out, drinking beer. You know the deal, and thanks to Into the AM for sponsoring this video. Okay, here's my setup. I've got my multimeter here. I've got my sensors. You can see that this Rife one has the element right in the tip of it here. A little bit different design, where this one, the element's in the same place, it just has some shielding around it. So I don't know if it'll make a difference. I've got a resistance chart pulled up here along with a spreadsheet so I can kind of keep track of what everything's reading. So we're going to start with just our stock unit here, the cheapy GM. And so we've got our stock one in here, and it's reading 2.95. Based on the chart here, that's between 77 and 68 degrees. And right now, if this thing gets 75, so that's reading pretty good. Let me document that. We've got ambient for the cheap one at 2.95. And let's check out our Rife unit. See what it's reading. And it's reading 10.5. Let me double check and make sure Rife doesn't have a different scale for these things. It is the GM, standard IAT GM connector. Generally, like on a GM default one, so 212 is the max, that's at 177 ohms. On this one, 212 is around 650 ohms. So it goes in the same direction. Cold is high resistance, but it's way different. This one's reading 10.61 though. I'm going to make a documentation on that. 10.61, and looking at the chart, 10.61 brings us between 78 and 67 degrees. Once again, we're at 75, so that should be good. That should be good. What that does mean, though, is that you can't just use this with a factory ECU. This sensor will not work with the factory ECU because of the scaling difference, unless you can go in and change the ECU settings, which you can with HP tuners on a lot of setups. But as a replacement without having access to the software, this is not going to work. If you throw it in there, it's going to skew everything off. Okay, so now here comes the big question. We're going to throw these things in. I'm going to get my stopwatch out. We're going to let them stabilize and get a stabilizing reading. So let's do stopwatch. I'm going to just lift the lid up, plop it in like that, and hit start. Our readings are going, and this may take a while, so. Okay, we're finally stabilized at 10,650 ohms, which brings us between 32 and 23 degrees. This thing says it's around 30, so maybe the display on here is a little bit more accurate. It took 23 minutes and 40 seconds, and you're like, whoa, Kyle, that's so long. Well, it really isn't. If you think about the fact that whenever this is installed in the intake track, it has air rushing across it, and that air really exchanges heat either to the probe or from the probe a lot quicker than just sticking it in an ambient situation. So don't get misled by the fact that it took 23 minutes to stabilize at that temperature. If this were in a car, it would be totally different. But the idea behind it is whenever we put the Rife sensor in, it should still, if it is faster to stabilize, should stabilize faster, and then it's not a one-for-one if there was air going across it, but it is going to be an indication that this would change temperatures or change resistance readings faster than a stock one. I still don't think that it is going to, but here's where we get down to brass tacks. So let's go ahead and pull this unit out, and you'll notice even whenever we pull it out, it really sheds heat a lot quicker. It's going to slow down a little bit, and then it's going to take a while to get back to ambient. So let's go ahead and restart this. Oh man, plastic on this has gotten really hard, really hard. There we go. We'll plug our sensor back in, check our readings once again. We're at 1111. I had it at 1061, so it's warmed up in here a little bit. Actually, that would be backwards, wouldn't it? That would mean that it's cooled off in here. 11, yeah, so it's reading a little bit cooler than it was, but we're not going to concern ourselves with that. Let's toss this unit in, same location, and start. And it may look like it's reading faster right now, and that could just be because of the resistance curve that translates over to temperature. I noticed on the GM one that it read really quick right off the bat because it was a lot colder. Then as it started getting closer to temperature, the readings really slowed down until we got to the point of the resistance curve where resistance shoots up as things get colder, and I saw it accelerate back up at that point in time until it finally stabilized out. This one will probably take a little while. We're looking at reading, let's check our chart here, Fahrenheit. We're looking for 35,000 ohms on this thing. So just like the other one, it's going to take a while. I'm not going to record this process. I'm going to shut everything down, and I'll come back to you whenever it's updated. Okay, we're coming up on the 26.5-minute mark, and I think it has finally stabilized at 35,790. Stop. So we're going to say it's 2651. 2651. So that is 2 minutes and 10 seconds longer than the stock style sensor. I mean, this thing still hasn't actually stabilized. It is still going higher, which means it is reading colder. The compressor's not on, so this unit, the little mini fridge here, is not getting any colder. So it's even to the point where it took like 27 minutes to stabilize. Okay, so let me break this down for you, and I'll tell you exactly why I knew this was going to be the case. It doesn't take an engineer to know that whenever you have a temp sensor like this that's using a resistance wire on there to read the temperature, that this unit, the GM unit that has the plastic casing over it, has more of the element exposed than this Rife unit is. And I get what their thought process is that this metal pole here that sticks out there is going to help with a longer possible sensor body in the pole to take heat or exchange heat, things like that. The thing that worries me about this though is that because less of the actual wire element is showing than the GM one, I don't know if it's going to transfer heat out as quick. I will say one thing that encourages me about the Rife sensor though is I think it may be a little bit more robust in situations like spraying methanol across the IAT sensor. The GM style ones have a tendency to go bad fairly often whenever you're spraying a water meth across them. But these things for 10 or 12 bucks a pop, I buy them at 3 or 4 at a time and have a spare with me. That way if it goes bad, I just swap it out. It's cheap enough. Whereas at 75, if this thing were to go bad, it would almost be heartbreaking because I could have bought 6 of these for the same price. But it may be more robust. It may last longer in that kind of situation. So what's my kind of synopsis on this? Not worth the money. It's just not worth the money. I can put, maybe rig up an air intake where we can put both of these side by side and see how fast that they react, and maybe it would react faster. I just don't think that it is actually going to react faster based on 20 years in process automation dealing with things like pressures and temperatures. I'm pretty, you know, I have a good sense of how pressure or temperature is going to react given different kind of scenarios and things like that, because I've worked from well below freezing on like liquid nitrogen plants all the way up to, you know, a couple thousand degrees in giant furnaces and stuff like that. And so I've worked with all kinds of thermocouples, RTDs, stuff like that. I just don't see that this $75 IAT sensor is going to be worth the money whatsoever. What's your thoughts? I mean, hit up the comments down below. If there's some other tests that you would like me to try with these sensors, or even maybe some other sensors out there, let me know. Hit up the comments, and I'm willing to try everything once. But for now, I'm probably just going to stick with the $10 to $12 cheap Amazon Chinese made IAT sensors. Listen, you guys know the drill. Thanks for stopping by the garage. As always, you know, make sure and check out our sponsors, intotheam.com/goatropegarage. Save yourself 10% on some sweet shirts out there. And remember, ABT, always be tuning.